Hey everyone, Joe here. In this episode, I had the fantastic opportunity to chat with Cole Pasley, Ryan Manzi, and Joe Hernandez, members of the Explosive Ordnance Disposal Flight at Spangdahlem Air Base in Germany. During our discussion, we talked about some of their amazing experiences, team resilience, and how vital it is to identify and focus on what is truly important. Enjoy.
Life, learning, leadership, the Llama Lounge.
Yo, welcome back to the Llama Lounge, a dialogue on life, learning, and leadership. I'm Joe Bogdan. I have with me some of my super friends in the lounge today from the Spangdahlem Air Base in Germany's Explosive Ordnance Disposal Flight. Cole Pasley, Ryan Manzi, and Joe Hernandez. What's up, guys? What's up?
How's it going?
Good, man. It's been a minute. I think it's been about 6 months. I don't know. The last time I saw y'all, I think I was in the shop. Cole was out doing, I don't know what Cole was doing. He wasn't there.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, you're
something,
out. Yeah.
something really important, I bet.
Yeah, I'm 100% certain it was something real important. But yeah, I got to Ryan. You guys and the guys got me in the bomb suit. That was real cool. But yeah, that feels like it was like years ago now. It's weird. I think it had to do with March being 8 months long.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. This year has lasted for about 4 so far. So
yeah, absolutely. My boss said that March was the longest year of his command. Right? I mean, it's it's how you guys been?
Been good. Busy adapting to the schedules, across the base and everybody flexing with COVID. It's been interesting, but a good experience.
Yeah, we've been trying to figure, because we have guests from all over the world, so we've been talking to them and seeing, because man, everybody's experiencing this COVID thing 100% differently, man. I'm telling you, from California, even in California, I was talking to Chief Aishin down at Edwards, and he's like, "Oh, our fitness center has been open the entire time." I was like, "Wow, ours has been closed the entire time." So same state, different things are going on, but I was thinking back. I was like, I don't think I had anybody on from Germany yet. So what have your guys' experiences been? Joe, like what have you been experiencing a little bit different than normal?
To be honest with you, it sounds very similar to what everyone else is doing. I think what was surprising to me is the way different flights were managing their COVID crisis. I think ours was awesome. We were doing teams a week on, a week off, and some places were just doing standby. Some other places weren't really, being affected. Mm-hmm. But what surprised me the most is the way people were so fluid and adjusting to the ebbs and flows of how this crisis was bell curving and everything like that. So
yeah, definitely. I think our team kind of did everything that you said, but at different phases. Like initially they were just coming in to work. And actually initially they were just, on standby basically, and just coming in, turn on all the equipment to make sure it was good to go for the day. But otherwise they were at home most of the time. And then now they've started to do the rotation on the shifts to make sure we have coverage. Yeah. Cole, like, has your life been affected dramatically? You've been able to fly still?
Yeah, I flew a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. I just had to sanitize the plane before and after. Like Joe was saying, we did the teaming concept at the shop. Ryan and then John at the shop came up with the teaming concept, and we went with it, and it worked out. It's pretty nice. We just put an auto reply up that said, hey, contact these 3 people who are going to be checking email. And then the rest of the shop basically just did what EOD's been asking to do for the past 20 years, which is show up to work, do nothing but train, and then go home at the end of the day. So it worked out pretty well. And then, we were there a couple of months later, and nothing's burned to the ground. So now we're like, hey, if we ignored all of these things for 2 months, let's take a look and figure out what's actually important, and how we can start reprioritizing stuff as we move forward to hopefully not let all of this be for a waste and all for nothing.
Yeah, man. I think That's a perfect perfect statement there, because I think we, even regardless if you're EOD or not, I think we've all been kind of talking about what have we been doing that we didn't really need to do. Stuff hasn't fallen apart. But then the other side of that is like, well, because we haven't been doing it, what's about to fall apart, like, 6 months down the road, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, track all of that. So it's
I kind of look at it like
time.
it's like a reset button, like you wouldn't be able just to hit a reset button and then start figuring it out topic by topic, but that's kind of what COVID gave us. It's like a reset button, and now we can start moving in little bit by little bit to see what we need to start reincorporating.
Yeah. It's like Thanos just snapped his fingers and figuring it all out as we roll back. Yeah. But awesome, man. It's great to hear about what's going on in Germany. I heard that's opening up a little bit more so you can travel throughout Germany. Ryan was mentioning that earlier. So that's good stuff. Yeah. So, hey, I wanted to start off by maybe introducing you guys to the audience. We have a pretty broad audience. So a little bit about each of you and maybe some of your experiences. And I was going to start off with Joe, if you don't mind. A little bit about you, how you grew up, how you got into EOD, how you joined the Air Force, and all that good stuff.
Sure, Chief. So my name is Joe Hernandez. I was born in Texas, grew up in Arizona. I joined the military after 2 years of community college, just kind of not really sure what I was doing with my life. Wanted to impact and make a difference, wanted to save lives, so I joined pararescue. That didn't really work out, so I was pushed out to a heavy equipment career field. So I was a dirt boy for the first 4 years, deployed to Iraq, to Kirkuk, Baghdad, and Balad as a dirt boy. And then as we were doing some route clearance repair, I wondered what it was like on the other side to make the road blow up. So I put in for cross training. And eventually was given a class date, and then cross-trained 2008, and then been EOD since. I deployed twice as EOD, one to Iraq again, and then one to Afghanistan. And been to Moody, Eglin, Luke, and here. Just an amazing experience where I'm challenged daily in my career, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I got an awesome brotherhood and an amazing daily life that I get to come home happy about. So
yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome, man. You deserve it. You're an amazing human being. Thank you for sharing, bro.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, Ryan.
Yeah, so I have a pretty unique story. So I grew up outside of McGuire Air Force Base in Jersey, and moved down to Florida outside Patrick Air Force Base when I was 12. And my parents weren't in the Air Force. My dad did 4 years in the Navy during Vietnam. But really what drove me to the Air Force was just being in a community that was surrounded by Air Force families, especially in my neighborhood. A lot of my friends, their parents were in the Air Force. So I got to see like how awesome their life was. And I was like, man, like this guy's parents are super young and they just retired. Like I thought that was the coolest thing. Like my parents are still working and his parents are retired. So I knew I wanted to join the Air Force after high school. Did 2 years of college just like Joe did. And was pursuing my bachelor's and just got tired of waiting. I just wanted to get in the Air Force. Honestly, I didn't care what job I did. I went to MEPS and they told me I qualified for EOD. I don't even remember seeing the video. Everybody talks about it. I don't remember, but they said there's a job called Explosive Ordnance Disposal. And I just pictured like a dump truck, like with people throwing bombs in the back of a dump truck. And I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. So I signed up for it, came back home, was talking to one of my neighbors, and he was like, so what job did you pick? I I told him EOD, and he's like, "Oh my God, that's awesome! Like, good choice. Like, nobody knows what those guys do. They just like sit on the backside of base, and nobody bothers them. They get to do whatever they want." From that point, I was hooked. It was a hard school, but I had it in my head that I was going to make it. So after school, went to Japan, spent 5 years at Misawa, northern Japan, and deployed 3 times out of there, all 3 to Iraq. And from there, went to McGuire, right outside where I was born. So, which was pretty cool. Did 2 years there, went to Korea, and from Korea, went back to Japan, and then deployed 2 more times out of there to Afghanistan, and then came here to Germany.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, that's funny, Ryan. I would actually pictured what you pictured too. When I first heard explosive ordnance disposal, I would have thought like there was a truck and you're just gonna take this stuff away, man.
Yeah.
So what's up with this video? So what's the video? I know Ryan doesn't remember it. So there's a video that they show you at MEPS on EOD to hype you up and want you to select that career field?
I don't think I ever saw it either, actually, come to think of it. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, maybe Joe saw it since he was the old retread.
Yeah, so the video was, basically like a promotional video on the aspects of on the mission sets of EOD, and you had a guy in a suit doing a VIP mission, and then you had a guy in the bomb suit. It was, you had your guy controlling the Rons, the robot, the original robot that we had, which is a giant tank almost, and then and it's progressed throughout the year, but
nice.
yeah, that was the promotional video that I really
they didn't just make you watch Hurt Locker and be like, all right, this is what you guys are gonna be doing.
It was more like MacGruber.
All right. All right, Cole, will you please share with us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Georgia. Probably lower middle class family, I guess. Didn't really have any family in the military. Wasn't acquainted with the military at all. My grandfather was in, long before I was born. But I don't know, the like Southern culture, veterans are kind of like little mini gods. Mm-hmm. So it was always kind of something to do. And my cousin joined and went to the Army, which of course, when you're in the South and you're not acquainted with the military, any military at all is the Army, just because they outspend us in advertisement. So he went to the Army, 101st Airborne. He was in the initial invasion of Iraq and all that stuff, and ground pounder infantry dude. And came time for me to join up, and I went and talked to the Army recruiter, had MEPS dates with the Army. I think he was in Iraq again, and I was riding back and forth with him, and he wrote me a letter and said, unless you want to run everywhere you go, get shot at and blown up, whatever you do, don't join the Army, join the Air Force. Those guys haven't made. So I went and talked to the Air Force recruiter, and went to MEPS with them, and they gave me, the book of jobs. I had no idea what I was looking at. I think I listed like a A-10 crew chief, helicopter crew chief, I think a munitions guy, like a bomb dump guy, and then EOD. Completely clueless on what any of it meant. And of course that was like 2004 time frame. EOD was starting to get short. So I got hit with EOD, wrote my cousin back, and I was like, hey, join the Air Force. I went EOD, and he eventually wrote back, and he was like, you idiot, I have EOD guys with me right now from the Air Force. Like, you're going to have to experience the same stuff. But then, later on the letter, he was, kind of the same thing Ryan was talking about, he's like, that's awesome. They get to do a lot of cool stuff. So went to basic training while my graduating high school class walked. So I left pretty early. Basic training, went to EOD school, spent about a year there, went to Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina, from there to Turkey over to Arizona. So funny story, Joe here and I, when I was stationed at Shaw, we had bombing range, Avon Park down in Florida. And he had linked up with the Moody EUD guys and actually came to the range clearance when Joe and I were both airmen. And he was our dirt boy for the trip. And I was a brand new EUD airman. So we were airmen together there. And then when I went to Luke, he had cross-trained in the EUD. And I walk in the shop, he's there in the shop as an EUD guy. And then we're stationed here together again. But I went to Turkey, Arizona, back out to Florida as an instructor at EUD school. And then from there to here. And then in the meantime, a handful of deployments in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan, attached to Army infantry, like we do. So, didn't know what EUD was when I was getting into it. Then about halfway through EUD school, kind of realized what I was getting myself into. Then I was like, oh crap, well, maybe I won't deploy. and then got into it and got to my shop, and I was like, holy crap, I want to deploy.
Right.
Because you start making friends, and you see them going through all the stuff that's going on over there. And then pretty quick, one of the things I like about EUD is, really quick, your friends become your family. And then you really want to start pulling your weight in the family. Just joined. Ended up stumbling myself into a phenomenal community and just really gaining myself another family. So it's kind of really blessed at how I just kind of like accidentally stumbled myself into such an amazing career.
That's such is life, right? That's what we're just stumbling around, figuring it out. But that's pretty awesome. So Cole, you kind of talked a little bit about what EOD does in general, and Ryan touched on it a little bit as well. So Cole, can you for those folks that really have no clue what EOD does, can you because y'all do a lot of different things. You don't just do one thing. You don't just get rid of munitions. There's quite a few mission sets you could support. Can you kind of explain that for our audience?
Yeah, we have 9 mission areas, and when I'm on the spot, I always forget about 2. So
you got the other guys there to support you.
Yeah, Joe and Manzi can pick me up, but we have we have the very important protection mission. So that's the Secret Service. Secret Service and Department of State teams have military EUD guys assigned to them. So we get our civilian clothing allowance. We get to dress up in smart casual or business suits and go work with Secret Service all over the place. Really cool opportunities doing that. You have unexploded ordnance. So, your UXOs. There's like weapons of mass destruction. You've got biological chem. You've got nuclear weapons that we handle. Improvised explosive devices, which was for all 3 of us here in this really entailed the bulk of our career doing the IEDs in Iraq and Afghanistan. We have the clandestine operations, so your special operations guy that are out there doing their thing. And I knew I'd miss 2. What am I missing, Joe and Ryan?
Yeah, so we have the nuclear support.
Yeah, we talked about nukes.
Range clearance.
Range clearance, yeah. And I'm missing one every time.
Bring up chem.
Yeah, it's a biochem. Aircraft. Holy cow, we're in the Air Force.
That's the best.
That's the one.
That's the best.
Yeah.
It's like, we are in Air Force.
Oh yeah, we do airplanes too. So the airplanes, a lot of people don't know that even the airplanes that, don't have a bomb on them currently still have explosive hazards. Ejection seats are driven by explosives. Flares and chaff are driven by explosives, the bomb ejection racks and things like that. So, we deal with the aircraft explosive hazards as well.
That's awesome. I guess team effort there. That was awesome.
Yeah, we'll blame it on the TBI. That's what.
There you go. Man, speaking of that, so I want to touch on a couple things, but I can't have a couple EOD guys on here without asking y'all to share some of the wildest things you've seen, right, in the line of duty. You guys get to see some interesting things that many other people don't get to see. So I was hoping I could start off with Ryan. What are some of the wildest things you've ever seen?
Yeah, so I'll probably take a little different approach than my teammates, but I would say out of all my memories that I've made, in almost 18 years in the Air Force, I'd say the one that sticks out the most is we call them DPAA missions, the Defense Prisoner of War Missing in Action Recovery missions. They used to be called JPAC, now they're called DPAA. I've had the opportunity to go on 3 missions throughout my career, all of them to Laos. And a lot of people, they know the mission of, the POW MIA, and they understand that, until we bring them all home, we're still looking for a missing in action, and killed in action in like Laos and Vietnam, Cambodia, Papua New Guinea, all those areas. But they don't realize, like, we actively go every single year, multiple times, like investigating crash sites and whatnot. So I'd say the most rewarding, like craziest thing that's happened to me is during one of those missions in Laos. We were doing an investigation on a pilot who had ejected his wingman, saw that he had a good chute, and he was in the canopy, the tree canopy. So they sent in combat search and rescue to go pull him out before enemy forces got to him. Basically, what happened is the pararescue weren't able to recover him. He was injured pretty bad as he like crashed into the trees with his parachute. That PJ had to make the call to leave him. Wasn't able to recover him, get him back to a helicopter. So for the next like 40 years, they were trying to find that site where he had, landed. With changes in the map and changes in the, GPS and everything, it wasn't as easy to find the site as you would think. So I was part of an investigation team, and we had gone to a bunch of different sites. We had some witnesses that were about 80 years old, and they were walking us through the jungle. We're trying to orient. We had a guide with us who was the original PJ. So he was now about 65 years old, 67. And he was out there in the jungle with us, trying to find this site where he was, so many years before. We only had so many hours a day that we could actually work. So, we would hike through the jungle and mountains for 4 hours and then, 4 hours back. It was pretty rough, but we thought it was going to be a bust. And the old man, the local, was like, man, this site, this is it. This is like what we call fallen American river, or seasonal runoff. And I was like, man, this guy's crazy. He doesn't remember. He's so old. We're just like walking around in circles. And the PJ was like, no, this doesn't look like it. This isn't the right, it's too steep. This isn't the right spot. And the old man's like running around the trees, like looking at stuff. And he's like, here, this is it. And I walk over there, and I'm there to, keep the team safe from, explosives. We drop more bombs in Laos than any country in history. So I walk over there and I see a piece of parachute material in the leaves, which is pretty wild. I'm like, wow, maybe this guy's onto something. So break out the metal detector, start sweeping. I have my linguist, who's a Army linguist, U.S. Army linguist, and we both look down on the ground and we see what looks like a credit card size piece of paper, and we pick it up, and it's an ID card. Wow. Yeah, pretty wild. So I pick it up and I'm like, it's an old ID card. It doesn't look like a CAT card or anything like that, but more along the lines of like a dependent ID. Right. And I can barely read the name, and I read the name, and the old man, the PJ, who was there, almost like 40 years to the day, or whatever the years were. I don't remember exactly, but I read the name, and just the look on his face, as I read that, I have a picture. Somebody took a picture of this like exact moment. Wow. And it was like just closure for him, you know, because he had spent his whole life regretting not recovering that pilot that day. And there I was in a jungle on a hillside in Laos with the PJ at the exact spot where that pilot, you know, passed away. Yeah, we were the investigation team. So we did an investigation that next day. I found like all the zippers from his flight suit, his pocket knife that you know, was open where he probably cut himself free from the risers. You know, the risers were clean cut.
Yeah.
We found like his Zippo lighter that apparently his dad had given to him. It said "In Memory Japan" on the bottom from the war. All the change that he had on him. I mean, that was where he, you know, lost his life, and just that closure for him. You know, all we call them war stories from our deployments. Like when I'm old, that's the story I'm going to tell. That's what I'll remember from my career is those trips to Laos. Those are the most rewarding missions, period.
Yeah.
And it's not just DOD that gets to do them, you know. Air Force provides photographers, life support experts, you know, that know everything about what the pilot was wearing. They can identify just a piece of fabric and they can tell you exactly where that came from on the pilot's uniform. Linguists from all across the services, they help with those. Archaeologists, anthropologists. I mean, it's a big team effort, and that is probably the craziest thing that I've ever seen. That after all those years, the ID card was sitting on the surface. It was like just screaming out at us, like, "Hey, I'm here."
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. You know, I think that there's, you know, definitely our civilian population, but even a lot of our military don't even know how much we invest in you know, getting our people back, right? Our fallen personnel, and that's an amazing story. I really appreciate you sharing that, Ryan.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Joe. Joe's going to take it a different direction here. The craziest thing he's ever seen.
Yeah. I'll tell a funny one because his was awesome. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, he should have went last.
Yeah.
that was a heartstring.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were in Iraq, in southern Iraq, 2009, and we were responding to a weapons cache, and that's just where the enemy just is trying to gather up a bunch of explosives to use at a later time. So we went out to the weapons cache, and we're gathering up all the ordnance and trying to identify everything. You know, things are pretty rusted, and you know, they have like, you know, mounds and mounds of rust and dirt on them. So getting to the ID portion is pretty daunting task. So we were trying to, you know, get everything identified before we got rid of it all. And one of our team members was looking at one. It was a 155 millimeter. It's an artillery howitzer round, and there's a burster adapter which is on the top of the projectile, and that's a key ID feature for like a smoke or a WP, which is white phosphorus. And he was saying like, "Hey, I think this is a white phosphorus round." And me and the other guy were telling him, "Hey, no, you're dumb. Just go sit in the truck." So, we gather everything up and we take it out to a local disposal area, an LDA. And it was out by a farm field, and we gathered everything up and we put our explosives on it and to countercharge everything, get rid of it. And we crack it off. And sure enough, that was a WP round. And white phosphorus, when it gets in contact with the air, just ignites in flame. So what we have to do with those is we have to blow them into the air so it'll get all consumed in the air instead of blowing it into the ground. Well, what we ended up doing is punting it out of the demo shot into the nearby farm field and lighting that whole field on fire.
Oh man.
Yeah, that was an oops one. That was an oops moment where we watched it, and it was funny because we watched it from the truck. I have it on video, and it's just flipping through the air, just spewing out fire everywhere as it's hitting into the farm field, and it started up a pretty big fire.
Man, I'm glad no one got hurt.
Yeah. No, we had the cordon air, we had the whole cordon off, so
Right.
There wasn't anybody that was going to get hurt, but that was funny because the team member Steve Alvarez, he looked at us, he's like, "I told you guys." All right, calm down.
Yeah, some farmer comes off pissed off, like, "What the hell did you guys do?"
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, so the Army, the Quick Response Force is the QRF. They're usually like they're the security to get us out to the area so that we can take care of what we need to, and they handle all of the like EOD blew up our mud hut or something like that. So yeah, they had to deal with the angry farmer.
Yeah, there might have been some money that was exchanged that day. That's awesome. Appreciate it, Joe. All right, Cole, what do you got?
Yeah, I hate this question just because there's so many things that we've just been blessed to do, and it's on such a continuum, of extremes. Like, I remember when I was, I think I was still in A1C. I was a brand new airman. I went on my first VIP. We call it Jimmy Carter Goes to Church. It's because Jimmy Carter is going to church and we have to provide, protection for him. And it's just muggy. It's hot. I think it was in July. God had just dumped in a bunch of extra mosquitoes for that service there. I mean, they're everywhere. And afterwards, we get to go meet Jimmy Carter, and it's South Georgia, peanut country. So he's got a bucket of peanuts there, and I go to meet him. He's like, "Hey, son, you want a peanut?" I was like, "No, thank you, sir." And he's like, "Get a peanut." I was like, "You got it, Mr. President. I'd love a peanut, thanks." You got situations like that. You get, like Ryan. That's probably the fourth time I've heard that story from Ryan. I love hearing that every single time. And then you get into Iraq and Afghanistan and start, getting to be with a small team and just experience things with them. So my last trip to Afghanistan, one of my team members, and Joe knows him as well, Timmy Donnan, I beat that poor guy to death on this deployment. It was his first time, and I took it upon myself to initiate him properly. But just getting to go through experiences like that, like we got called out to a wadi, which is a really deep irrigation ditch that just stays dry most of the time. And I guess it was a one that the Army unit frequently walked across. So they had what we called a dismounted IED in there. It was like a little, I guess it was like a 1x4 piece of wood with a saw blade that's bent up, like one of the old handsaw, blades that are bent up. So it kind of creates like a little spring, and there's a metal piece on the bottom. So when someone steps on it, it compresses that, it makes contact and detonates whatever they have waiting. So the Army guys had found an old one in this wadi, and we drove up. I get out of the truck, and the Army guys walking me up to the side of the wadi there, and normally we'll do what's called a long range recon. We'll look at it from kind of a distance, and he walks me to the edge and he points. He's like, "It's right there." Holy crap! Yeah, you're right. It's like 20 feet away from us. All right, well, let's get back. But it's in this really deep ditch, this wadi as we call it, and I was afraid our robot would flip over if we put it in there. So I came up with an idea with Timmy. I'm going to go down 40, 50 feet down the wadi from this thing. I'll use our detector and try to clear the wall and make sure it's free of any type of secondary device, and then I'll tie a rope, or I'll loop a rope around my waist. I'll loop it around the handle in the back of the robot, and then we'll let it down the side of this little wadi wall, which is probably 20 or 30 feet deep, and a pretty steep angle going down. So Timmy's like, "Yeah, that'll work." Then I wouldn't tie it on; I would just loop it on. So when the robot's in the bottom, we'll just pull the rope back out, and the robot can go down and handle this thing. So Timmy starts driving it over to the edge. I loop the rope around it and I wrap it around my waist really nice. And I'm just going to like lower this thing down. Well, right as it goes over the edge, it like high centers on the rock. So I just walk over to the edge to kick it real quick over the edge.
Oh.
But Timmy realizes what's going on and he just floors it at the same time. So I kick this robot at the same time that Timmy's flooring it down this like 20 or 30 foot embankment. So of course now the robot just goes from 0 to top speed in a split second. And I still have got the rope wrapped around me where I was going to let it down. So now Timmy's dragging me into this wadi where this IED is. And I just get instantly infuriated, climb out of the wadi, go back to the truck. I'm dirty, dusty, bleeding now, climb in the truck, you know, and Timmy didn't know that all happened. He's just like, oh, cool, I'm in the wadi now. And he's driving through the robot screen. He turns and looks at me and he's like, hey, what happened to you? And I'm like, you just pulled me into the wadi with the IED, Timmy. But I mean, there's been times like that, you know, we got into a really heavy firefight. And, you know, I turned around and we all dropped flat and I start scanning for cover or start scanning for the source of fire. And Timmy's in the fetal position, rocking back and forth on the ground. And here I am thinking that he's been hit, you know, and I'm calling out to him and he's got the robot goes on a backpack on our back. And I was like, Timmy, are you hit? And he's like, no, this robot's too heavy. I can't get up above my stomach. So this like huge firefight's going on around him and he's just stuck, you know, he can't get up. Then, you know, same deployment, our truck gets hit with an IED, you know, we get blown up. So there's so many of these like crazy experiences that we get. And that's just like the IED world. And then we get to go, you know, stand next to presidents, stand next to foreign dignitaries. We get to, you know, even over here in Europe where, as Ryan alluded to, the U.S. is really good at dropping a whole bunch of bombs. and we left a whole bunch of them over here in Europe. So, you know, Belgium and the Netherlands and you know, Luxembourg and like they're finding, you know, like it's close to like 10,000 a year that they find. So our teams get to embed with them over here and go basically just drive around the Netherlands for a week, killing bombs, you know, and doing like actual, no kidding, protection of personnel and property. You know, they're building a new bank, but here's a World War II bomb. We have to blow this bomb up without damaging the bank, you know, and just experiences like that. Like, and then you get Ryan telling you that one and Joe, it's so hard to compare them all.
Right.
It's just going back to the intro. Like I think we all feel just super blessed to have been able to come do something like this and then earn a paycheck too. Like they actually pay us to do this.
Yeah. That's awesome. And, you know, you kind of alluded to a couple things there, but a topic that I thought would be cool for us to talk about for a moment would be like, you talk about small teams, right? You go out there and you're really, you're taking care of mission with your small teams and resilience comes up all the time. But whenever I've noticed hanging out with EOD guys, you know, you guys are tight and you have that, and because of the nature of what you do. And I think that small team resilience is what's really all about, right? You could bring an entire unit into a theater and start talking about resilience, right? But I mean, what's that really doing? Man, it happens at that small team level, and I think that's one of the reasons why you guys are so tight. And a lot of times you don't have to worry about a lot of those things because you guys know each other so well. What are your guys' thoughts on that? About just like resilience overall, because your unit, even within the civil engineer community, EOD teams, to me, seem like they're more resilient, and I think a lot of it has to do with that small team resilience and leadership at that level.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start on that. I think from the very beginning, you know, going through the training that we go through, we all share that like common bond when we all arrive at our first duty station. Like, you know, obviously EOD school isn't impossible. I mean, it's if you work hard and you pay attention and you make it a goal, like, you can definitely make it through. But I think like once we get to our first units and we see like how people work together and how you have to rely on each other, you know, for your safety. Not only that, I mean, like your first range op, you're priming into a couple blocks of C4 that like if something goes wrong, that's really your last day. I mean, there's no easy way to put it. Like, so you're relying on people to do exactly what they're trained to do, because your life is in their hands. And then you take that to like an operational range clearance, like at Nellis or something, and you're walking like shoulder to shoulder with these guys. And if they do something stupid and get blown up, like they could take you with them. So we have a lot of trust in each other, and I think that's what makes us so tight. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why we're such a tight family, but I think from the very beginning, that's the core.
Yeah, and having been at the schoolhouse, I mentioned in the introduction, I was there. So I was an instructor for 3 years, and from day one, we start fostering the team concept, because, and we, especially us three here, we color everything through our experience in Iraq and Afghanistan. And that's kind of how we paint a lot of our analogies. But, if I'm Joe's team member and it's my job to charge the robot batteries and I forget to do that, and we go out on an op, now Joe doesn't have a robot, and Joe has to go put a bomb suit on and do with his hands what we should be using a robot for. So now, as his team member, I've directly endangered his life. And we started fostering that from day one. And even as an instructor, there were times where I would have an airman mess up, and I would I don't think we can call it punishment or discipline. We would correct, we would train, we would team build. The rest of that airman's class, while that airman watched. So the thing that he messed up, he wouldn't have to pay for. We would make all of his teammates pay for it. But it was fostering that, we are a team, and every move we make, every step we take directly impacts your team member. You don't work among yourself now. You're part of a greater structure of people.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on it, Joe?
Yeah, I completely agree with both of theirs. The only thing I would say also contribute is the fact that each member of that team, each person in the flight has a voice, whether it be the airman that's just out of school, or the flight chief, or the flight commander. Everyone's voice is heard when it comes to EOD operations. So the P3 is what we call the third team member. When we ask a question or we start talking about the plan of attack or the course of action, their voice is heard. So before I can say, hey, this is my thoughts, this is my idea, this is why I want to do it. Do you guys all agree? And if that person doesn't agree, he tells me, well, why don't you think about this? And we have a discussion about it. Because we're all going to be on the same page before I go do what I'm going to do, and before we all go do what we're going to do. So I think that airman's voice being heard lets him know that he is there as a team member, and he is a contributing factor. So I think that that type of environment makes this career field that much more tight, because we all know our value in each other.
Yeah. I think there's two things that I would add to that. Even that too is in one of the last podcasts, you had said that some people find their identity in always being right. Mm-hmm. And that structure for us now, of course, there's obviously we're a type A career field, and there's people out there that are certainly like that. Yeah. And if it comes down to, what type of motorcycle is the best one, then you better believe we're all going to argue it because we're right.
It's Harley, right?
Yeah, it is Harley. Yeah. But since we structure ourselves like that from the outset, as a leader, as a team leader, I have to now open myself up to be wrong. Right. So, I might be sitting here on my 4th or 5th deployment, but when that brand new airman says, hey, did you think about this? Like my life's in the balance, and I can't afford just to be right for the sake of being right. I need to take this new airman's opinion and really marinate on that for a minute, and be like, well, holy crap, he might have a point. I didn't think about that. So it opens us up to a little bit of vulnerability where we can be wrong, and still be, the leader, so to speak.
Right. And that's vital. I think, and that's absolutely vital. And I think that's what that topic has come up quite a few times. And I think there's just too many leaders that like you had mentioned, that we talked about before, was they're so consumed with having to be right. And that they're putting their teams in danger, right? Because they're like, no, I'm always right. I gotta be right. I can't be vulnerable being wrong, or they won't see me as a leader.
Yeah.
That's a lot of issues. Yeah.
And that resiliency piece, another thing that I think was crucial to us from the deployment side was, like to set the stage. A lot of these remote locations, these, and it even got more remote than FOBs. You would be at a combat outpost or a patrol base where, there's no running water, no AFN, there's no Taco Tuesdays or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're the only 3 Air Force people on that little, football field size installation.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys are, sleeping together, you're eating together. When you get the chance, you go shower together, if there's a shower there. But you're with each other 24 hours a day for 6 to 9 months. And it's almost impossible to hide your true self, for that long when you're that close to people. Yeah. So there's on a certain rock clearance, one of the guys I was deployed with had to I think we'll still stay in the PG frame here for the podcast, but he had to go to the bathroom and there's nowhere to do it. So he was in the back of the truck and he had to open up an ammo can while they were driving down the road on a combat mission and go to the bathroom in there. And of course, in that particular situation, his aim wasn't on point. So he ended up, going to the bathroom all over himself. So, I mean, that's, and when you get down to it, like that's vulnerability. And so when you can go to the bathroom on yourself and have your other 2 team members laugh at you, and then you laugh at yourself, right? Because in this leadership culture, like we take ourselves just too seriously, like we have too much pride. So can you get to a point where you're close enough to a group of people to laugh at yourself and open yourself up at stuff like that? Right. And I think that vulnerability is what creates the closeness and the trust, and that closeness and trust results in, resiliency. And of course, we're not perfect in our career field, but I would argue that we do have a lot more just closeness than a lot of others do.
So let me ask you this. Well, how do you think dark humor plays into that? Because y'all see some stuff, right? And I think, and I've always found it fascinating, right? Because I was listening to another podcast and Elizabeth Gilbert, she was talking about when she was going by a hospice place. She's like, there's got to be some dark humor going on in there. I mean, like there's got to be, like to be able to do that job every day. And I think it plays a role, right? And having that closeness, that tightness, and being able to have some of that thing, other people look at it as like, I can't believe they're laughing about that. I'm like, no, they kind of have to.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about that? Like, let me start off with Joe. What do you think about dark humor?
Yeah. So I think it's the way that we kind of deal with the situation that we have. Sometimes, we're dealt a crappy hand, so we have to deal with it in a crappy manner, or sometimes the job will put us in a position where we're having to, be pushed mentally to a point, or we're seeing things that, we can either break down, or we can break down, or we can laugh it off. So we, some of us choose to break down, some of us choose to laugh it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What do you think, Ryan?
Well, I think 18 years in EOD, I mean, I've heard and seen just about everything. I like to, stay pretty straight edge when it comes to that stuff. But definitely don't let it bother me when the guys are like trying to find the limit. They're pushing the boundaries, and it's all in good fun. It's nothing malicious or immoral. It's just they're just trying to make light of the situation. And it's yeah, you've seen a lot of stuff and heard a lot of stuff, but it's yeah, I think it's just an outlet for us or for the guys, and yeah, it's all in good nature.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Cole probably one of the kings of dark humor. From
No, so I think there's two different ways to go here. So the one is, if I remember right, it was it Colonel Grossman, and I think it was On Killing, maybe. He talks about like stress inoculation. Mm-hmm. If I have my sources right, I don't have it in front of me, but so I think dark humor can serve as a form of that, and so can rites of passage and things of that nature. And that, I mean, that's opening up a whole other can of worms there. But yeah, so there's definitely a desensitization aspect that comes into play with dark humor. But there's also, going back to vulnerability when you, like somebody had asked me, why did I think EUD shops, and they were actually talking about Spang EUD in particular, like why do you think that, what is it that causes you guys to be so close? And I think my response was, we have found a solution to the resiliency problem that a lot of organizations want to deny exists. And it's because it doesn't always fit the politically correct model. Mm-hmm. And that's where, going back to vulnerability, where some of the humor, some of the, the things that we pass back and forth, and the op-ed one of the op-eds I wrote for Llama Lounge was talking about being offended, right? And those people who can weaponize offense. I think I have given probably every single person in my flight the ammunition to weaponize offense against me if they chose to do so. But I think that they trust me. I definitely trust them. And there's that mutual trust that goes back and forth, and that trust can't exist without vulnerability. But the other side of that is, you can't play that card and then be a jerk and not have your guys' best interest in mind at the same time. Mm-hmm. So that's where that mutual trust comes into play. I might be speaking out of turn, and see if Joe and Ryan shake their heads back and forth or flip me off or whatever. But I think that, the dudes at my shop know that I have their best interest in mind, and I'm going to do what I think is best for them. And then in return, I trust that you get the real Cole. Generally 99% of the time, whatever goes through Cole's head comes out of Cole's mouth.
That's 100% true. Yep. Absolutely. That's my experience.
And then about 10% of that time, even Cole is like, man, I can't believe I just said that. Like, man, even I'm offended. But it just that level of vulnerability and that level of mutual trust like opens us all up to like just genuinely know each other. Mm-hmm. So that when, at 10 o'clock at night, when my phone rings, like, this isn't work calling, this is a genuine friend of mine calling that needs something.
Right.
And that's kind of what I think that type of vulnerability breeds. And it's a fine line, especially when you get into organizational relationships, for sure.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And I think all things leadership, right, they're going to be falling those fine line areas and the gray areas. Otherwise, it'd just be easy. We just manage the situation. So, and I think you guys do an amazing job, and you have an amazing team. But man, so transitioning to go in, I just want to talk about something so one of your op-eds, Cole, I remember it was the only article that I've ever received negative feedback from, right? And on the Llama Lounge.
No way.
It was the only article, and it was clearly the person who gave that negative feedback did not actually read the article, because they said, how are you guys going to justify putting an article talking about people deserve to get shot at on your page? And I was like, wait, the word deserve was not in the title.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, and did you read the article? They're like, yeah, I did. I was like, if you read the article, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, right? And I was like, man, if you could just do a quick synopsis of what kind of drove you to write that article, Cole. And then I'd love to hear like Joe's and Ryan's what they feel about, that article, or at least what the synopsis of it was.
Yeah. Man, let's see. This is where, now that I'm starting to get into like writing articles and doing podcasts, like I have to be careful what I say or I'll never be president. if this stuff can get pulled back up.
That's not going to be the reason why.
Like having gone through, I don't know, you can I look back through my time in UD and I kind of look at, what defines me, what defines the reactions that I take to certain situations. And, I don't want to put names in it or anything, but there's a situation that I had where I was sitting on a couch watching a movie with a guy, and then 2 to 3 hours later, I'm putting like tiny pieces of his body into a Ziploc bag, as much of it as we could find. Talking to an Army guy, learning about his siblings, the colleges they were going to, what their family's doing. And then a couple of days later, he's getting tourniquets put on his legs because they're both, blown off. Just those types of situations. The Tech Sergeant Adam Gannett was my first boss that I had when I graduated UD school, and he got killed in Afghanistan. Mikey Burris was another good friend of mine, killed in Afghanistan. So you start to get these repetitive incidents where I think there was a period in 2009 to 2010 where for 10 months straight, I lost a person I knew every month. And then deployed, in that time frame as well. And it's the sheer grace of God I'm still married after having gone through that, or just a really, really tolerant wife, or a lot of both. But I guess what I'm getting at is going through those situations, like, I guess for lack of a better term, it teaches you what's really important in life. And as I go around, not just Air Force bases or military bases, just like, the grocery store at home, I'll see what somebody's like mad talking to the manager about. And the thing that goes through my head is like, man, that person needs to get shot at, and if I go around base to some sort of a function, I'll see people interacting and I'll think, man, they need to get shot at. And it's like an idiom in my head that really just means like that person has no idea what's truly genuinely important in life. Mm-hmm. And those experiences really color a lot of what I do. And I think I talked in that article, there's a lot about, what's really important, but there's a lot about leading with your gut, and leadership going down there. So, of course you have to, condition your gut with training and preparation and things like that, and knowledge of what's out there. But when you're getting shot at, like you don't have time, like, oh dear God, let me go comb the AFI to see what they say about this situation. Mm-hmm. Like you need to judge the best of your ability where those bullets are coming from and send bullets back in that direction. Right. And God knows, plenty of people have gotten that wrong, but plenty more have gotten it right. And that's kind of what I'm getting at is, condition your gut, and then lead with your gut. For me, it took getting shot at to kind of open my eyes to that, to find out what's really important. But if you're, to me, and this is, Cole Pasley philosophy here, if you're not leading with your gut, are you really a leader at all? Mm-hmm. My other college track is in biblical studies, and I think back to the difference between the scribes and the experts of the law, right? They knew what the scripture said. They could refer back to the paper and tell you what it said. But the true leader that came out was like, no, let's lead with our gut in light of what those things said. So when I'm looking for a leader, I don't need a leader to just read me a sweet AFI bedtime story. I need a leader that like knows the intent of that, has that ingrained in their gut, and they make a snap decision based off of the conditioning that they've had and just the ethical and the moral compass that they have. And for me, I going through those experiences was such a crucial part of my life that's kind of how I view everything now. and I think I've even told my wife, in an argument, like, you need to get shot at, which turns out really well. By the way,
I'm sure
when you
it
say
does.
that.
I'm sure it does.
But yeah, it's just that type of just knowing what's really important, when we're late on some additional duty, is that really worth causing a huge scene about? Or, or when, if the dudes in my shop, fail some sort of additional duty inspection because they were busy doing something else, as a leader, do I blow up about that? Or do I just say, like, nope, you guys are, I call it the 80-20 rule. If you're knocking 80% of the stuff out that really matters, I can let 20% of the stuff that's probably a little less important slide. Now, when something fails, we have a discussion. What needs to be? Can we move something into that 80 and back into that 20? But I just don't lose my mind and freak out about the minor stuff, because at the end of the day, like, we're still breathing air, like we're alive. I have my limbs, although they hurt pretty bad most days now, but they're still there.
I don't know. Joe might have you beat on that. I don't know. I've seen his knees wrapped up.
Yeah, Joe's a drama queen.
Yeah. No, I really
it's
think
just
that's awesome.
looking through that lens of what actually matters, and that was kind of the heart of that article.
Yeah, no, I will say that it was the only one that we got some negative feedback on, but it was also one of the most highly reviewed. Just everybody loved that article because it was really talking to the truth. And like you said, it wasn't just talking about, okay, downrange, what's most important, the training and all that, which it is, right? Is making sure that you're focusing on the right stuff. But the way you talk about it is like talking about what's also important in life. What are we losing our minds about? Are we spending too much time focusing on things we have little control or influence over? What's actually important. So I think that's a great message, and I love that article. It was a great one. I really appreciate you taking the time to write it.
That's what matters to me.
Yeah. That's awesome. So Ryan, did you have anything to add about what Cole was kind of talking about?
Yeah. So like, when I read that article and his, when he talked about being shot at, I think like one thing like came to mind, an experience I had in particular was coming back from a deployment, and, we love what we do and all the positions that we've been in, no matter how dangerous or stressful they were, we're here to talk about them. So I think we appreciate the battles we've done, but when we get home and we're integrating back in with our units, the squadron and whatnot, I think it's really hard for people to understand like what we do. So when this one instance, I just got back from a deployment, and one of the guys was working on like a self-help project in our hallway. And we were in a building. Our building was incorporated with the rest of CE. So we had a wing, like a hallway in the CE building. And he was like painting just this like border of a mural that he was working on. And one of the safety monitor, he happened to catch a glimpse of him using some latex paint with no PPE on, right? So you would think like, it's paint, it's a paintbrush. Like, what PPE do you need? So when I walked in on this situation, he was taking a photo of him because he wanted to use it for his safety report. And, I just came back from this deployment where the Air Force had put me in some of the most dangerous, they wouldn't believe the stories if I told them, like the situations that we were in, the danger that we faced. And here we are getting lectured about not wearing gloves while, painting a border. I think that story like really stuck out when I read the article, and it's a simple message, like people lose touch, like what we're in this for, right. The big picture. We get so used to our steady state mission back at home. It's like, don't forget what we're really in this for. you know, for when they call our name and tell us to go, we go. And it's really hard to come back to that sometimes.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes, people talk about, we're instilling discipline, but it's like, okay, are we really? I mean, is that the purpose of what you're doing, right? Is that the purpose of you berating a person because they didn't use gloves while they were painting a mural, right? I mean, that's very true. Joe, what are your thoughts?
So I thought when reading that was my connection. If somebody were to read it and say, well, I've never been shot at, I don't know what that feels like. These are just war stories that, some gung-ho guy wants to throw out there and say how cool he is. But if you...
That was a big part of it as well.
Yeah. I was about to say, I'm pretty sure that was part of his reasoning behind it.
Nailed it.
I'm glad that didn't get lost.
So if we could look into that, dive into that, and look past it, either way, I think that overcoming adversity, I think that's something that a lot of people either haven't experienced enough of or haven't really identified in themselves. So I think that overcoming the adversity and being comfortable with being uncomfortable, I think those two things that people either haven't experienced enough of or don't identify that has happened in their lives. And as soon as people can experience that adversity and overcome it, then that, that's growth, that's progression. And then, if you haven't experienced that, if you don't know what it's like to, be shot at, quotation marks, then you haven't yet understood what it's like to be comfortable being uncomfortable and reacting to something that, you can't control, that is something that is weighing, that is heavy, but knowing that there is something that can shed that, knowing that there is something that you can do or that time that it takes to get that weight lowered or off of you, and that being, comfort is the enemy of progression, type of thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's funny because when Cole was talking about the intuition piece, right? Like talking about you should have your gut feeling and all that. And the more I've been studying and listening to different podcasts, they're talking about, like, one of them, they talked about how our bodies have evolved over time to be like very effective machines. I mean, we've learned and to not to go against your gut, is probably counterproductive, long as you've been trained and, you've influenced yourself correctly and have educated, and to just consistently go against it. I mean, it's just probably not going to have the best results, but sometimes you do have to trust that gut feeling, like you said, and just kind of move into take action, take that action. But awesome. Cool, guys. So, man, we've already been on here for about an hour, and we normally wrap this up what we call a leadership rapid fire. And since we got all of you guys on here together, I was gonna split up the questions for y'all, so that way we can get off on time and I can respect your guys' time. It's Friday evening over there. It's probably beer 30 for a couple of you right now. So we'll start off with this. So we have a series of 4 questions. I'm going to ask 3 of them, or 1 to each of you. And then the 4th one, I would ask all of you guys each of you to answer. Sound good? All right.
Yep.
All right. So the first question is going to go to Ryan. What is your favorite leadership trait?
Definitely my favorite leadership trait is leading by example. When my boss is out there and he's doing everything he's asking his guys to do, leading, just out there getting dirty, training, not asking his guys to do something that he wouldn't do himself. That's definitely something that I've experienced a lot in my career, and that's something I try to emulate. And I encourage my guys to do the same. Awesome.
Sounds good. Cole, you wrote that down, right?
Yeah. Hey, TMO's coming Monday. I'm not his boss anymore.
We'll have another episode after Cole PCSs. You guys can tell. No.
Yeah. Spangdahlem confessions of the
All right, Joe, the next question's for you. What is your favorite quote?
Wow. My favorite quote. I'm gonna have to go with Colossians 3:23. That is sorry for the non-biblical, but that's just kind of something that's really stuck with me. One of my best friends from home, he owns a home improvement business, and that's what his he has on his trailer, and when he makes hats and shirts, he's got Colossians.
He did a quote for Tile at my house in Arizona. I didn't know that. I didn't know you knew him. Nice.
Yeah. Colossians 3:23 is all over his.
Yeah, it was on his hat.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he said, whatever you do, work with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. So that's what I kind of tried to live my life as is whatever it is that I'm doing. I may have a boss that I don't get along with. I may have a boss that I get along great with. But either way, I'm going to do what has been instilled in me and the morals that are given to me to the best of my ability, regardless of who I'm working for, because I'm ultimately working for the man.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Third question goes to Cole because he reads 1 billion books a month. What is the number one book, or maybe a couple books, that you would recommend for an aspiring leader?
I'm gonna go off the beaten path here because there's all the the leadership, popular leadership books, I guess we'll call them, and people have likely already seen those. So getting back to, I guess, the everybody needs to get shot at type of theory, I would encourage people to read The Tattooist of Auschwitz if they haven't. Probably not a leadership book. I doubt you'd find it in the leadership section, Barnes and Noble. But just, James Mattis said, he talks about books, and he's like, unless you've read hundreds of books, you're functionally illiterate because life is too short to live through your own experiences. And I think probably nobody, none of us at least, or nobody that's aspiring to be a leader today has been through Auschwitz. So visiting Auschwitz was huge to me, and one of the opportunities I got over here. And then I read The Tattooist of Auschwitz with those memories of actually having walked the grounds of Auschwitz. And just to move someone's frame of mind over to what's really important. Dear God, look at what people have gone through during their time. And is someone showing up 2 minutes late for work really that bad? And kind of getting into why did they show up 2 minutes late for work? What's going on in their life? What's in their heart? Things of that nature. So just books like that to just expand your perspective on the things that are actually important in life and what bad actually looks like. I guess another one I would recommend. So I guess aspiring leader, one of my things today is I think a lot of people are wanting to be leaders just for the sake of being leaders. Leadership's not the destination. That's the vehicle that should be taking you somewhere else. I think too many people are seeing it as the destination. So, why do you want to lead? Why do you want to be a leader? And we're actually, since we're on Bible stuff, the book of James, we were just talking about that the other day. It actually says in there, you shouldn't aspire to be a teacher. And you kind of look at that and you're like, well, why not? And you go into the context of the day, and it's because the teachers got, accolades and a better standard of living and things like that. And it's kind of you shouldn't aspire to be a teacher just to get the position of being a teacher. You should have another reason for it. And it's same thing with leadership, what I found out when I got to Spangdahlem is by being a leader, I gained 25 extra sets of problems because I internalize, what's going on. But I also gained 25 extra sets of awesomeness too. I don't think we're prepared, but just, shifting that lens, I think The Tattooist of Auschwitz is really cool. And then the next book It's another religiously based book, and this guy is using it to talk about how to talk to someone else about religion. But this book gave me so many more tools in my toolbox outside of religion. It's helped me so much talk to not only my guys and girls, but also the leaders, and get like good answers. But it's called Tactics by Gregory Kokel. And it's basically how to communicate your position or find out what someone else's position is. And it's talking about, communication tactics. Now he does it from a, how do you talk to other people about Christianity? But from reading that book, I'll tell you, day to day, I use so many of those tactics just in my leadership position. Because when someone says something, what do you mean by that? Like, what are you actually trying to get at, and using those tactics? So Tattooist of Auschwitz to move your perspective, and then tactics to just expand the leadership toolkit.
Awesome. Cool. And we'll put those in the show notes as well. Awesome. So last question, and this is however you guys want to interpret it. I'll start off with Ryan again. At the Llama Lounge, we're all about life, learning, and leadership. So how do you find harmony between life, learning, and leadership?
Life and leadership. How do I find harmony? Just taking time for yourself, right? Like everybody, well, the guys on the show here know I'm a big runner. I like to run.
Yeah.
And
50 miles a day, it's fine.
How many miles are you up to for June so far?
Maybe 300.
Yeah.
It's the 19th. It's the 19th,
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, it's taken that time to like really like just decompress, and it doesn't have to be like physical activity, just something that you can do just to reflect. I use my run. I have a lot of time to think about things while I'm running, and a lot of times I just reflect on decisions I had to make throughout the day, or things that are coming up, and it just gives me a lot of clarity. So I would say, definitely find something, your outlet, where you can just meditate somehow and just reflect on everything. I think that helps harmonize those traits.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. All right, Joe, how do you find your harmony between life, learning, and leadership?
I lean on my family, to be honest with you. My wife is my rock, and my kids are my joy. So I try not to focus too much on the things that are outside of that, to be honest with you. I've already experienced pure joy, and that's, with the laughter of my kids, or the jokes that they play, and the screams that I get when I get home. And then I'm always learning something from, my wife. She's always teaching me something new. I'm always learning something as being a dad. There's never a point in my life where I feel like I got it down. There's, just when I feel like, okay, I'm where I need to be, it's something new that comes up, So I find my happiness and my joy, and I find where I need to be the leader, and where I need to learn more about, what it is I'm in my position in my family. So I'm never satisfied. I'm always hungry to be a better husband, to be a better dad, to be a better coworker, to be a better supervisor and troop. And sorry, Ryan, for this week, or sorry, Cole, for this year. But I'm apologize to the wife daily.
Yeah. That's awesome, Joe. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, Cole, close it out for us. Harmony between life, learning, and leadership.
Yeah, I'll probably plagiarize Joe's answer a little bit. When I hear harmony, like my mind goes to balance, which is not at all what that question's asking. Because at first when I think balance, how do you find it? I'm like, I don't. That's for sure. Like I do not find balance, and it's something I continue to struggle with. The fact of the matter is EOD is a family business for me. And I don't mean like my dad and my dad's dad and all that stuff. Like it's like, and this part is not a joke. Like my wife has an EOD tattoo. We have pictures hanging in our hallway of our kids wearing EOD shirts. We view our shop as our brothers and sisters. And honestly, my wife and I had a talk the other night, where she's talking, we'll take it all the way back to the beginning and talk about COVID. One of her biggest stressors through this COVID thing is we've had people PCSing into the shop and she doesn't know who they are. And that's causing, issues, in her life, which just tells you, how much this shop means, to her and to the kids. We have an event at the shop. There's a bouncy castle in the bay and the kids are out there, and we have our one token giant, Evan, who's in the bouncy castle with the kids, it just, and what that means for me is so life learning and leadership. You talked about books, and for me going to school, leadership, leading the shop, and then just life. What having a family support structure and a wife like that allows me to do is it allows me to live my life out of balance. Yeah. And so I can look at my life and be like, holy cow, I am not balanced at all. And I need to work on this, but it's okay because I have a family that's right there behind me. And that harmonizes it. Like I said, when the phone rings at 10 o'clock at night, it's not work calling. It's, one of our friends is in trouble, and, I don't get the wife, like, what do they need? I get the wife like, oh my God, is everything okay? What's going on? Who is it? Things like that. So that level of involvement from family makes it less difficult for me to live my life out of balance while I continue to try to figure out how to balance my life, because by no means am I saying that that's a healthy way to live, because you have to continue to find those. For Ryan, it's running, and I've tried to get into it myself.
Don't kill yourself, man. Don't.
I'm almost there. But you have to continually work for balance, and maybe that's why the military is only a 20 or 30-year career, because you can't do a lifetime of this. But yeah, like Joe, definitely my family harmonizes this for me, and if it wasn't for that support structure, I wouldn't have harmony at all in my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I would definitely like to add family to my answer too.
Go back and add running and family. Yeah. Good call, Ryan. Good call.
Yeah. Rumi's awesome. Ryan's wife is a freaking gangster. She is amazing.
That's awesome. Sweet, guys. Hey, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come on. You're
Thanks for having us.
Man, it was a privilege, and you're three of some of the best human beings I know, so I really appreciate it. And we got to run this back one day when Cole gets to his next assignment and he loves life at what he's doing next.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Just keep telling yourself that. It makes it right. It's just focus on what's really important when you get there. It'll be fun.
I'm an instant gratification guy going into technology development and long-term acquison. This is going to be amazing.
There you go. Yeah, it's outside the comfort zone. But awesome. Well, thanks, guys, and
thanks for having us, Chief, and thanks for doing this. Your podcasts and your Llama Lounges that you do, and your daily quotes and stuff like that on Facebook that I read. It's really encouraging. So keep up the good work.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Joe. All right, y'all. So, and to all our listeners, as always, keep safe, man. Stay healthy, and llamas are out. Take care.
Laters.
Thanks for tuning in to the Llama Lounge podcast. Be sure to visit the homepage for links to products and services related to this episode. And don't forget to subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice. See you next time.